Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, a guide to designing high-performing eco-industrial parks, organized jointly with the Donor Committee for Enterprise Development, the DCED, which brings together governmental, philanthropic, multilateral agencies working on private sector development, seeking to enhance cross-agency collaboration and to share knowledge. I'm Hannes McNulty, Green Industry Expert at the Green Growth Knowledge Partnership, and I would like to thank you for being here with us today. Now, before we get started, I would like to take a very brief moment to introduce the Green Growth Knowledge Partnership, or GGKP as it is better known. We are a global network of experts and organizations dedicated to providing the policy, business, and finance communities with knowledge, guidance, data, and tools to transition to an inclusive green economy. If you aren't already familiar with the GGKP, I would encourage you to visit any of our 3 knowledge platforms most relevant to your interests: the policy-focused Green Growth Knowledge Platform, the Green Finance Platform, and the Green Industry Platform. You can also consider signing up to our newsletter at ggkp.org/subscribe. Now, I'm also very excited to announce that the GGKP is soon launching the Green Forum, an online community space for sharing and discussing insights on a range of themes and issues related to a sustainable economic transformation. There'll certainly be lots of discussion on eco-industrial parks as well, so do stay tuned. Now, today we are fortunate to be joined by eco-industrial park experts from the German Development Agency, GIZ, the Department of Trade and Industry of the Government of South Africa, the Industrial Development Group of Egypt, the Global Eco-Industrial Parks Program, and the World Bank. We're looking forward to an exciting discussion exploring practical application of the International Framework on Eco-Industrial Parks, commonly known as the International EIP Framework, which was jointly developed by the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, the World Bank, and GIZ. After the webinar, we'd appreciate it if you could take just a few minutes to complete our short survey, as your feedback will really be a big help to us in shaping future webinars. Please also note that a full recording of the webinar will be available on our website at ggkp.org shortly after this broadcast. It is now my pleasure to introduce the moderator for today's event, Klaus, Tyrkko, Chief Technical Advisor at Global Eco-Industrial Parks Program, a 7-country program advancing the uptake of eco-industrial parks practices and creating an EIP conducive policy environment. Klaus has served previously as Division Chief at UNIDO in a policy advisory role at UNDP and with the European Commission. Klaus started his career in the manufacturing industry and has also served as a consultant in more than 20 countries. So without further ado, Klaus, I'm really delighted to welcome you to today's webinar and hereby turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, and welcome to everybody who is joining us today for this exciting webinar, which is on developing eco-industrial parks and how through eco-industrial parks we can achieve environmental, social, economic, and organizational sustainability in industrial parks. So I'm working for United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO, as the Chief Technical Advisor for our program on eco-industrial parks. Industrial parks are an important part of national, subnational economies and are many times drivers for economic development. They are big employers. They are providing opportunities, new ways of doing things. With this concentration of activities, it really brings a lot of advantages. Economies of scales, possibilities of cooperation, and so on. At the same time, there are some risks which are magnified by the fact that we concentrate industries. And and also there might be some other social and other type of risks that become more prominent when concentrating industries. So today we are looking at these things and how to make it all more sustainable, and we are going to discuss things like what is an eco-industrial park, how this framework which has been developed can help the countries and governments, and how does also social, economic, and organizational sustainability play a part in all that. For discussing this, we have 3 presentations with around 10-15 minutes each. These will be given by Mareike Boll of GEIPP and Dario Quaranta from the World Bank. Government perspectives by Bernd Oellermann, and then Ezzat will be giving a perspective from the point of view of industrial park management. I would, before we go into the presentations, there is a possibility for very quick questions just after the presentation, if there is some particular point in the presentation. But if you have a more an overall question, then we should have that in the discussion part, which is after the presentations. And you can ask any type of questions relating to this by writing it into the chat box of the webinar, this software. And they will be then grouped together and collected, and then we'll take that up for debate. There is, I would like to note that this online event will be recorded. This recording will not show names of participants or anything like that, but it will be recorded. So if you disagree with this, this might not then be the event for you. Because this can be made available then afterwards. All right. With this, I would like to ask then the first presenters, who will be Mareike Boll and Dario Quaranta, to talk about the international EIP framework update experience. And let me one more time present Mareike and Dario for you. Mareike is coordinating the GIPP working group for sustainable industrial areas, and Dario is the senior advisor on finance, competitiveness, and innovation global practice at the World Bank Group. With this, Mareike, Dario, please.
Thank you, Klaus. So I'm going to start. Next slide, please. I think there's coming the agenda next. Yeah. So next slide. Thank you. So this is a joint presentation of UNIDO, World Bank, and GIPP. Klaus from UNIDO is moderating today. I will give you a first insight, and then Dario is taking over and will present the second half of this presentation. And we are going to present 3 years international EIP framework update and experiences. Next slide. So, and to get started, we would like to create a common understanding of what an eco-industrial park is. So EIPs can be defined as managed industrial areas that promote cross-industry and community collaboration for common benefits related to economic, social, and environmental performance. So the EIP concept addresses interrelated aspects such as climate change, social standards, shared infrastructure, and so on. And there are different terminologies which are existing. And in the figure below, you see a combination of, or combinations of related EIP terminologies. And we in the, or UNIDO, World Bank, GIPP are referring in the framework to the term eco-industrial parks, But of course, there are also sustainable industrial areas, there are low carbon economic zones, there are green investment clusters, and so on. Next slide, please. So what are the benefits of eco-industrial parks, or why do we need them? For example, with the eco-industrial park, we can get a reduced use of raw materials, water, energy, and chemicals, as we are improving or trying to promote efficiency within the parks. There's also reduced waste through resource circularity, minimized greenhouse gas emissions and release of pollutants, as there are energy efficiency measures, or renewable energy is made use of. There is also an overall reduction of environmental, climate, economic, and social risks. Furthermore, there is an improved competitiveness and profitability, as we are reducing costs, the creation of good quality of jobs, improved workers' health and safety. That's because of social management systems and a social infrastructure within the eco-industrial parks, increased quality of life for community, as an eco-industrial park has a community outreach, and also grievance management, which is within but also outside the park, better access to new technologies, finances, and improved park management to oversee the overall performance of the whole park, not just of the companies, and then also improve resilience, as this will improve the long-term viability of a park and therefore also business continuity. Next slide. So the International Framework for Eco-Industrial Parks. So as already mentioned, GIZ, World Bank and UNIDO partnered to create a standardized framework that can be implemented globally, which is the Eco-Industrial Park or International Framework for Eco-Industrial Parks. And we developed the first version in 2017. And today, or right now, we are pleased to announce that we published the second version, and it's online or available online, which you can find under this link, which is provided here, but we can also put it in the chat box so that you have access. So that's, yeah, we're super happy that we can announce that now, and welcome you to download this second version of the EIP framework. And the purpose of the second version is to increase the applicability of the international EIP framework, but also to introduce new indicators to address gaps that were identified over the last years. And we are also providing examples of country-level experiences which UNIDO, World Bank, and also GIZ made over the last few years. And we would also like to mention that there's the Practitioner's Handbook, which we published in 2018, which is a step-by-step guide on how to implement the framework, which can be downloaded under the link which is provided there. Next slide, please. Next slide, yeah, thanks. The objectives of the EIP framework. So on the left-hand side, you see the objectives. On the right-hand side, you see parties or institution organizations we are trying to address with the EIP framework, but also who can make use of the EIP framework. And one objective, which we already mentioned, is to create a common understanding, but then also to monitor and assess operational performance of existing industrial parks. And with those assessments, we can identify improvement opportunities. And the eco-industrial parks is also an information source for investment decisions, for funding, for due diligence studies. And by fulfilling the indicators of the eco-industrial park, an industrial park can also gain recognition and build a market profile. And for this parties or target group, which we are mentioning on the right-hand side, it can also serve as a practical framework to support decision-making within the own organization. And now I would like to hand over to Dario, who's giving you more insights into the EIP framework. Dario, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mareike. I think that it's important to frame the principles that are embedded in the framework. So if we can go to the next slide, please. we will have now an understanding of what is the framework. The framework is basically a performance indicator mixed of 4 categories that we have listed here. We have park management, environment, social performance, and economic performance. So these 4 pillars are the characteristic that we are looking for into an industrial park. What we do basically is measure the performance of the park in these 4 categories. And those are 51 benchmarks that are divided into qualitative. So we call them indicators that they are prerequisites that we use in order to understand if we can implement the framework. And then we measure the performance in terms of performance indicators. And here we have an example that is the distinction between prerequisite and performance indicator. We have picked one from the park management, in which we ask, for example, a distinct park management entity exists to handle park planning, operation and management and monitoring. This is a precondition. If there is no park management, we say that it's something that has to be addressed before measuring the performance of the park. And the other one is an example of performance indicator that is quantitative, is taken from the social. And we have here a proportion of all the firms in the industrial park with more than 250 employees that have a well-functioning OHLS management system in place. The percentage that we require in this case is 75%. So as you can see, those are 2 different ways of measuring the performance of an industrial park. Now, if we go to the next slide, we understand that once we have the performance indicator, we have to develop these performance indicators in a country. And so what we do, so please, next slide. We use basically the toolbox that we have defined as handbook, in which we define 2 main categories. The first one is how to implement the framework at national level. So we have defined step by step the action that have to be taken. In particular, I would like to highlight the diagnostics. In the diagnostics, what we do is to highlight the enablers or the impediments to the implementation of the adoption of a framework at national level. That means that we look at regulatory, institutional, and technical aspects. In order to look at the technical aspect, we have to go to park level, and this is the second leg of the handbook. At park level, what we do is to analyze the technical intervention that have to be implemented in order to measure the performances through the framework. So the 2 documents that we have developed, they have to be used together in order to have an effective way of getting results. And if we look at the next slide, please, we can see how the trends of the implementation of the eco-industrial park is well received in different regions of the world. Almost we are covering all the region with the 3 organizations. And it's interesting to see that this is a growing trend that is coupling with the sustainability issue that has to go along with the competitiveness. If we go to the next slide, we can understand that the differences among the 3 organizations. Here we can see that in Vietnam, UNIDO succeeded in supporting the government to develop the decree that allowed the implementation of eco-industrial parks. At the same time, in Egypt, GIZ supported the creation of a roadmap to go through eco-industrial park concept to be developed, and they assisted the 3 industrial parks to do that as a pilot. So we have technical assistance in case of UNIDO, technical assistance in case of GIZ, and the World Bank has a difference that is associated to the second aspect. So we have done, for example, in Turkey, we have assisted the government to develop the national EIP framework program. At the same time, we have supported the implementation of the EIP program through a financing that is 300 million in order to support the government in providing finance for infrastructure and private sector development. So I think that the three organizations are quite versatile in the sense that they work to support governments. The difference is that the World Bank provides also financing for the implementation. I think that saying that, we have given to you a very brief outlook of what the framework potential is in terms of developing in different countries and in different sectors. However, I would like to hand over to Klaus to collect questions, if any, or to move to the next presentation. Klaus, to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mareike. Thank you, Dario. Interesting, and thank you for all the cooperation in developing the second version of the framework. As I don't have any specific questions on your presentation now, then there might be that we can move over to the next presentation, which gives us the government perspective, in this case from South Africa, where we get perspectives on the sustainability in industrial park as a part of the national strategy. The presentation will be given by Bernd Oellermann, who is the Director of Regional and Industrial Development from the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. With this, I'm not sure we get a video contact to Bernd, but I think that the presentation and the audio will give everybody a very good understanding about the work done in South Africa. Bernd, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Klaus. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are, and probably good evening if you're on the other side of the world. I think if we can go straight into the presentation, I would assume we jump the slide, just going to the next one. The government's perspective on frameworks is generally, we like to employ frameworks where they actually assist us in better decision-making, better policy development, etc. With particular reference to the ERP framework in South Africa, the value that we found in it was firstly, and if you look at the right-hand triangle, was firstly looking at its contribution and the information that we obtained out of the ERP framework that was developed in 2017. It came at exactly the right time when we actually started development for our framework for industrial parks, especially also on an eco-industrial park level. So that's the first point where the ERP framework really became relevant for us. The second aspect where it really played a great role was we could use it as providing a reference or a standard or a benchmark for our industrial park work. I'm not going to explain much about South Africa. We don't have much time for that. We have quite a number of industrial parks and special economic zones. And in order to get all of them onto the same operational standards so that we have a consistent value proposition to investors, to the community, to government, to the country as a whole, and everybody else, it's important to really have that standard. And the ERP framework really helped us, identify what those core aspects are if one looks at a standard. Thirdly, the ERP framework assisted us as a reference point in development and further development and building out our industrial park revitalization program, which is a national program running in the DTIC since 2015 that looks at addressing some of the shortcomings in our industrial park infrastructure, specifically starting out with government-owned industrial parks. And then fourthly, the ERP framework also helped in guiding our strategy and our planning, not just from a programmatic perspective, but also for a longer term perspective. I just quickly want to go to the left-hand pyramid. There are other frameworks as well, as I mentioned initially. Now, within our work in the industrial parks and eco-industrial park work, some of those frameworks that we've incorporated and that have been utilized include things like design thinking, for example, the Project Management Book of Knowledge, PMBOK, Natural Capital Protocol, integrated reporting, I'm sure there are some of our attendees that are familiar with some of these frameworks, as well as, of course, national policy frameworks, such as the National Development Plan, the NDP, at that point in time, the Industrial Policy Action Plan, which is a very high-level conceptual action plan for the economy in South Africa, the SDGs, of course, and a number of others. All of these provide inside knowledge and guided us in our further development. Okay, shall we go on to the next slide, please? I think if one talks about sustainability, I think most who are here today, probably at least understand some aspect of sustainability. If you look at the 4 dimensions of sustainability, environmental, social, and economic, I think everybody's familiar with, but more than the 4th one typically is looking at the institutional side. There are a number of areas here where we found the Eco-Industrial Park framework to be quite relevant and assisting us in our work. Now, if we look at the environmental aspect, in South Africa, we have the Department of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries, who do amazing work when it gets to the environment. They have a number of different initiatives, but in the overlap with industrial parks, we had to make sure that, we start addressing the environmental aspects, as best as possible. While you will find that the ERP framework, and it was stated earlier, I think one of the slides that Dario spoke to mentioned that. If you look at companies more than, that employ more than 250 people, the framework really is very practical. The challenge becomes if you have smaller companies, and in a number of our industrial parks, we have small companies. Okay, so the challenge is, what do you do? How do you address the environmental aspects within that context? Okay, so the framework was useful, but we've utilized it to expand on, to come up with an action plan for our industrial parks. Social, of course, in South Africa is huge. Okay, we don't only are the country with the highest inequality in the world. We also have huge unemployment, and poverty really is a big challenge for national government, but actually for everyone in the country. So the social aspect really needs a lot more attention, and perhaps that is something where we have gone a bit further than the ERP framework. And there's a lot more focus on integrating actions in an industrial park into the local community, and linking that to the regional economic and social development. Economic, I'm not going to stand still on. I'm mindful of time, but obviously the economics of an industrial park are quite critical. Okay, I think there will probably be some questions about, so what are the core success factors for an industrial park, and especially an eco-industrial park? I think if you look at it from an economic perspective, you need to make sure that in the least there is a good business case. Okay, now I can expand on that. We can probably have a whole webinar just on business cases. Okay, so I'm not going to stand still on that. And then, of course, the institutional one is probably where we have a large challenge, not just in South Africa, but from my engagements with other colleagues all over the world, I see this is still quite a bit of a challenge, is how do we change institutions? How do you change the institutional frameworks? How do you change government mechanisms, processes, systems, so that we are able to support a just transition, okay? To be able to support an eco-industrial park, to be able to support greener, more climate-friendly practices. Okay, I'm not going to stand still more on that. Let's go to the next slide, please. What I've done on the last slide is just basically highlighting some of the challenges and opportunities that we face. There are a number of others. I think, if one looks at these, probably our main challenges, if you drill down into the root causes, is probably awareness and understanding. Okay, so we need to do a lot more work on awareness and understanding. Because of the lack thereof, we have a tension with a number of key policy directives, where people very often argue, well, how do you address sustainability if poverty and employment and inequality really are, much higher on the agenda? Okay, a second main challenge probably is change management, which is completely underestimated and probably misunderstood in terms of its impact. I would also state that, and this isn't a global problem, I think humanity is out of time. Okay, we need to wake up. There is no more time to transition slowly into these things. Major challenge in South Africa also is financing. While there's significant support for assessments, there is no or very little support for implementing actions on the ground. Okay, so it's great to have a report that says, well, you know, we can do this and this and this in terms of, you know, waste streams. This is what we can do around water and energy, but to actually implement those for a company and to provide the funding for that, we're still lacking drastically. I'm not going to stand still on any more of those under the challenges, maybe just one, and that is really the lack of coordination. I hear this everywhere I go, not just in eco-industrial parks, but in other areas as well. People always talk about, we need to coordinate, you know, we need more coordination. However, it seems nobody understands really how to do that. So one of the things that we've done, and this is part of the solution here, is we've started an eco-industrial park roundtable or platform where people share information, okay? And it starts with the sharing and opening up those communication channels. That's the way that you start addressing the coordination. If we look at opportunities, great opportunities for South Africa to actually leapfrog, you know, into much better technologies. I think there are incredible opportunities for us in this space to actually introduce what is called digital twins or building information modeling, BIM, for IR technologies, just transition type concepts, technologies and solutions. I think it's a great opportunity for that. It's also a great opportunity to completely change the job market and fast track people who have struggled up until now under the existing system and economy to actually participate in the economy through green jobs. Okay, and lastly, I just want to say one thing to that, and that's the last block there under opportunities. I believe it is time to create something incredible. If people are prepared to consider the value that everyone can add, we can really build an incredible future for our children. And I think with that, I'll end. Thank you very much, Klaus. Back to you.
Thank you, Bernd. Also, always inspirational and to hear the views from South Africa and the work you're doing there. If there is no real points on Bernd's specific presentations, more broader questions coming through, and please keep those questions coming through. I will then perhaps invite our last speaker, who will then bring you the viewpoint of the park management also. And there's maybe there was somebody who was wondering in the chat also that what is the sort of the difference between an EIP, eco-industrial park, and overall sustainable industrial development. I think it's really the sort of the park management which makes where we are working in the EIP program, and as also Dario mentioned earlier on, is that there needs to be a coordinating entity, whether it's the owner, whether it's just the operator of the park, whether in some cases it's the government. And this is one way of creating and finding that coordination between the different industries. So if you have just sustainable industries, it could be one company, or maybe a couple of companies who are co-located for one reason or the other to one place. We can make those industries, those operations, more sustainable. That would be your sustainable industrial development. When we go into eco-industrial parks, we are always having a defined space. We always have a park management. We always have this sort of a system in place which can then also bring together the companies, which can be the speaking with one voice on issues relating to the community outside and related aspects. With that small interlude, maybe I can then invite Mary Ezzat, who is the Industrial Park Manager at Engineering Square in Egypt, to tell a little bit about the perspectives from an industrial park manager and on the EIP and the whole sustainability of industrial parks. Mary, please.
Thank you, Mr. Klaus. Thank you all for giving us this opportunity to share our experience. IDG started in 2008 with an area of 2 million square meters in Giza City. In 3 years, we achieved more than 80% of our target. So the government granted us another extension with 1.1 million square meters to become 3.1 million in 2011. In 2017, the government assigned us to develop an area of 16 million square meters in the Suez Canal area as a special economic zone. And our latest project in the Mediterranean with an area of 2.7 million square meters was started early in 2019. In only 13 years, and as we speak now, IDG has about 22 million square meters under its management as industrial parks, serving more than 140 investors and 22 SMEs. Next slide, please. Since our main aim is to build complete ecosystems, we offer many products, services, and amenities, from selling, renting lands to turnkey factories and warehousing. These all, in addition to the park's amenities that allow our investors to find all under one roof and to create all-inclusive business community, such as medical center, daycare, shuttle buses, and catering services. Next, please. Our journey with SIA conferences started since 2015 in Turkey, then 2016 in Mexico, to host SIA conference in Cairo in 2018. That was our clue towards eco-industrial vision, helped us to plan our roadmap from preparation, development, implementation, till the monitoring stage that we expect to reach in 2023. Despite all the obstacles we faced in a developing country like Egypt, we jumped many steps in many aspects. Next, please. Now we have a solid org chart for park management with a specific job description for each role. Park budget and KPIs are now up and running, and bylaws as well, while SOPs are still in process to be done by Q1 2021. Next. In the economical side, our studies illustrate that we spend more than 1.5 million Egyptian pounds per year on the Boll's electricity that considers almost 70% of the park's consumption of electricity. So we decided to substitute the sodium bulbs with LED that would save about 1.1 million Egyptian pounds per year. IDG is also introducing integrated parks through an application that would create a sustainable and effective communication channel between tenants to reduce resources and to create cooperation between them. Next. Due to the old infrastructure in Giza City or in October, we couldn't substitute the sodium with solar cells. But in Alamein, we considered also the sustainability aspect. We're also implementing rainwater harvesting system there. Trucks permission were all turned into digital instead of papers. That would save about 110,000 per year of consuming papers. With our partnership with travel transportation company, we offer electric shuttle buses for clean movements inside the park that would also support in the social aspect, as we offer free of charge service to the community. Next. Through our daughter company, NASA Academy, we offer high quality technical and education and vocational education and training that would provide our tenants with the calibers they may need. Also, IDG adopts many services, including security, housekeeping, maintenance, human resources, and financial services that allow its tenants to find everything in the park, need not to worry about anything they may need in their businesses. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much, Mary, for giving some examples and showing how different type of sustainability aspects are being implemented at your parks there in Egypt. I think one of the questions which have come through also from the audience is about isn't this very expensive to make all these upgrades and these type of things? I mean, part of it is, of course, social and service upgrades and updates, which might cost some money and all that. At the same time, also the parks are investing in their competitiveness, and there are a number of tenant companies that many parks would like to attract, and those are typically multinationals or companies who have operations in several countries or are parts of international value chains, and this type of companies, they're also expecting a type of services, a type of quality in the park they're setting up operations. There are times when such companies are touring industrial parks in a specific country, and they just say bluntly no, that they cannot establish here. Their consumers will not accept that they will be setting up operations in such a park. So it is an investment for the better, and at the same time, the companies who are part of the parks, if they find that the services that are provided are value added, they typically would be then also willing to pay for it. I mean, there are differences and possibilities of paying, but this is many times the situation. Perhaps other things that are coming through the chat is also about the social, the gender aspects, and that could be perhaps a point that we can discuss a little bit more about how what sort of inclusivity is promoted in the EIP framework. How gender equality is taken up, how opportunities for women are considered. I will invite my colleague Mareike to talk about the experiences that they have had on this at the GIZ part, but I think that there were already, as you saw in the discussion, in the presentation from Mary from Egypt, there are things that proactive parks are doing, providing transportation, providing daycare, these type of things, which can then also attract both skilled and also employees who then have many times then the responsibility for such childcare work also. So with that, maybe I can invite Mareike to share a couple of words of your experience there with the GIZ program and the gender dimension.
Yeah, thank you, Klaus. So the EIP framework is covering, of course, also the topic on gender issues, especially the needs of women in an industrial park. And when you look into the indicators, there are a lot which are integrating, especially the needs of women. So, for example, if we are talking about services, we are recommending that services can also include women healthcare campaigns or consulting on domestic abuse and so on. And also when it comes to the social infrastructure, we are asking for separate toilets and washing facilities, and also for childcare, which also Klaus mentioned before. And then the industrial park security, which is then also if there's transport, if they have to work until late, so transport in the night times, or also lighting in the industrial parks, and then also equal opportunities for skills development and for career development. So we are having indicators asking that also underrepresented gender is participating at those activities, and I think more than 50% should be women in the case of industrial parks, or in our case. And then also that the working environment should be free of violence or harassment and discrimination. And we are asking for harassment response systems within the park. And so I think that are just a few of those who are mentioned in the EIP framework. So we are aware of the topic, and we are covering it in the indicators. And especially we as GIZ, we supported in India, next to Hyderabad city, an industrial park, which was supported also by the Association of Lady Entrepreneurs in India, to build up a park which is dedicated or addressed to women entrepreneurs. And I think there are around 170 women entrepreneurs working or doing their business in that park. And by establishing the park, we were talking, or we were together with the stakeholders, so mainly women, we were developing the master plan, so we could integrate their needs right at the beginning of the planning of the park. And I think that was also kind of a great experience, as to also find a way how to address more the specific needs of women in industrial parks. And yeah, I think that's from my side. I'm not sure whether one of the others would like to complement here.
Yes, if I can perhaps invite all the panelists to turn on their cameras, and we can maybe have a discussion on this. Anybody else who would like to discuss a bit more about the gender and the promotion of gender issues as a part of the eco-industrial parks concepts? No takers on that. Then in that case, what I'll then do is that maybe we can talk a bit more about, there was a question about the synergies that can be created in the eco-industrial park. There was a question about symbiosis and this type of things. Maybe just very quickly, we can recap the type of synergies, what we call industrial synergies in industrial parks that we have. They are not only the sort of the industrial symbiosis, which is the sort of the cooperation. We also have other types of synergies there, which are much more common, I would say. We have infrastructure synergies. Of course, the park management is providing a number of shared infrastructures. Sometimes the tenant companies go together and they create further infrastructures together. Many of the services, these are synergies of these different types, which we already discussed. And then we have the the industrial symbiosis, which is usually that we are a waste material or a side stream of a production is then utilized by another company. Is there any specific case on which have sort of attracted your attention, Dario or Mary, when it comes to these synergies that you would like to highlight as something which is not so often discussed?
Klaus, thank you for that. I think that one of the first thing that we have to understand is which park we are supporting, because there are two main categories in our opinion. One is those that we define as specialized industrial parks and those that are mixed park. Now, in specialized industrial parks, we refer basically to, for example, textile or leather, and those have limited option for industrial symbiosis because the companies are almost the same. And so what we do, we help the park to develop common infrastructure. So the industrial symbiosis in this case is park and firm. It's not firm to firm. When we refer instead to, and the example can be a highway of steam that can be created. So you centralize the production of steam and you deliver steam to the factories without creating a single boilers that are more inefficient than centralize the production. And sometimes you can also recover the waste heat. On the other hand, we have mixed industrial parks. So we have different industries, and this will stimulate the industrial symbiosis. That is, so we can help less on the infrastructure and more on the creation of infrastructure, of industrial symbiosis among companies. And I think this is the distinction that we have at the beginning, just to see which kind of action can be supportive for the type of park. Now, specific example, as I told you, we have seen that, for example, in Bangladesh, we are helping an industrial park for these two type of interventions. And industrial symbiosis is mainly from an infrastructure side. So the relationship of optimizing general infrastructure, common infrastructures. But I don't know if GIZ or you have other examples. I think that you have developed a program in Vietnam and you have identified similar cases in industrial park that you have analyzed. So it could be interesting also to listen from you about it.
Thank you. Mary, something on this as well?
No, thanks.
No, okay. Bernd, are you online?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes. I was sort of a little bit thinking about also that how does the whole concept you've been rolling out the EIP and this sort of sustainability, the industrial park revitalization program and other initiatives, important initiatives that you have there in South Africa. Do you have taken some measures also to attract foreign investments? Is this or local? What is your sort of what's your business development side, and how does the shared services, the symbiosis, the added value of EIP play in that promotion?
Yeah, I think you'll have to stop me because I might get very excited about this. Okay, I think firstly what we've done is we focus our special economic zones primarily on foreign investment. Okay, so that doesn't mean that our other industrial parks in the country which fall within the revitalization program do not attract foreign investors. We do. But the SEZs up to date have been, firstly, the primary focus for that. Secondly, what we've done in terms of symbiosis and building these kinds of links within industrial parks, the National Cleaner Production Center of South Africa has been around for more than a decade already, and they've had a very successful energy efficiency program in South Africa. This has not been limited to just industrial parks. It's actually available to anyone in the industry. And they have had some really great success stories. They've also done a program in the Western Cape called the Western Cape Industrial Symbiosis Program, together with Green Cape. Both of these organizations have achieved some really significant impacts in terms of symbiosis and circular economy interventions. So that's definitely something. And then maybe the last thing that I just want to mention in terms of the business development side, part of our long-term strategy for the eco-industrial parks is to develop a capacity and a service to companies firstly within that industrial park, in support, of course, for industrial symbiosis and circularity, but also for the other management aspects. Okay, so things like, for example, if you look at energy, those that are familiar with South Africa's environment, we have a seriously constrained electricity grid. So renewables need to be managed and introduced in a very responsible and a proper way, potentially, to feed back into the grid. There's a whole dynamic around that. So renewable energy actually needs a lot of attention. A lot of companies don't know how to do that. Okay, so if we can facilitate the establishment of that kind of service to a company, I think that can have a big impact. The same, of course, for water. South Africa is one of the most water scarce countries in the world. Although if you've been in the country in the last couple of weeks, you would think very differently, because we've had some serious rainfall as a result of Eloise, which has been over Mozambique and Botswana and Zimbabwe and Zambia, for example, which is a cyclone. And then, of course, the waste economy in South Africa is massive, and we are not tapping into it. Okay, so again, providing those kinds of services that enable companies to actually improve their production processes, facilitate those connections with other companies. I think that's something that we want to establish long term. We are not there yet at this point in time, unfortunately. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you very much. That was good. Maybe I can also bring in then Mary, just on a question about the international EIP framework. How did you take that into consideration when looking at developing the park, and how did you go about that?
Yeah, we planned our roadmap towards the EIP system. As I mentioned, we started with the preparation a year ago, then development, and we're now in the implementation stage. For sure, I think applying certain regulations, bylaws, code of conduct, following the framework, positively affects us and other businesses here in the park, creates efficiency, encourage the SMEs to start and expand their businesses into manufacturing in the park. In addition to the services that we added in the operations of the park, also I think it attracted more investors.
Okay, good. That's interesting. I'm scanning through the questions. Please let them come when you have interesting questions. There is a question about what do the various organizations which are here presented, international organizations, what sort of policy support are you giving for rolling out EIPs in Africa? Maybe we can take a quick round. Mareike, Dario, and then finally myself, about what we are doing in Africa.
Thank you, Klaus. Oh, shall I start, or Dario? Sorry, then I go first. So GIZ is working in a lot of African countries, especially at the moment, as we have a special initiative from our Ministry of Development Cooperation. We are, I think, working at the moment in about 10 African countries, and it always depends on how our projects are set up. But for example, in the case of Egypt, we are working together with private park operators, but also with the government. And in Ethiopia, it's the same. We are working with private parks, but we're also working together with the government. And as GIZ, we are not, in terms of policy support, we are trying to, of course, implement the EIP framework and to also advise along strategies which are then complying with the indicators and with everything which is set up in the EIP framework. But we are more working on a kind of park level, so with the park management, which we always try to also link then to policies. And also, if we are doing workshops, we are also inviting the public or the public authorities as well. But maybe I think World Bank or so UNIDO has more experience on this term of policy support. And it's because it's for us, it's always a mixed approach. And maybe Dario, you can then follow up here.
Sure. I think that that Klaus is referring to the question by Traoré from Côte d'Ivoire. So I think that the question that is putting to us is a little bit different. So he's asking us the way in which we can apply this concept in Africa, where there are no basic infrastructures. So the point that I would suggest to answer to this question is the fact that the EIP framework will adapt to the context of the country. We need to make a sort of benchmark to understand what is feasible and how is applicable to the context. And so you developed a roadmap that will assist then the country to develop the full range of performance indicators, but we can't ask to a country that has not basic infrastructure to implement them all of a sudden. So this has to be a process, and I think that GIZ has already explained this very well in terms of creating a roadmap that you start with a specific activity, and then you mount with the growing of sustainability in terms of what the country can do to integrate some of the principles that are included in the framework. And for what concerns his second question, that he states about the type of technologies that can be used, for example, floating isle or floating schools, those are embedded in the concept. We don't say what has to be done. We say which performance has to be reached, and the strategy to implement that can vary in terms of different technology that can be applied, different strategies. So the context, the idea that is behind that is how we help to measure where we are in terms of performance and how can we get there. And the way in which we can get there can differ from the context, from country to country, based on the context of the country, and available strategy that we can implement locally. So I think that this is in a nutshell to respond to this question that I found very interesting. And I've read other questions that are always in doubt about how to adapt the framework to different countries. I think that one of the main activities that we do is to benchmarking through a piloting phase, which is the situation in the country, and then to decide to help the government to implement step by step the EIP framework. That's what we usually do, and I think this is something that is shared with the UNIDO and GIZ in terms of approach. But Klaus, please tell me if I said something that is not in line with what we do.
No, I think that there are a couple of, you're absolutely right. There are a couple of questions here. One are more on policies, others also going into infrastructure discussions. But yes, this is typically what we do from UNIDO side. We are at this moment in Africa. We are very active in South Africa, Egypt. Also looking into we've been doing some work in Nigeria, also Ghana, Morocco, looking to different extents. When we then do a full country program, it is divided into two different parts. One is supporting the government on developing the policies, and the other part very firmly at the park level, doing the assessments, how to promote industrial synergies of different types, how to create a more sustainable park, and then also as a part of that, looking at how the park is performing and how it's changing vis-a-vis the EIP framework, the international EIP framework. So those are there was a question here, is that just to maybe there was a specific question here from did in Egypt, did you use the EIP framework to assess your operations there at the park? Did you do that, or is this something that has been coming a little bit later? Mary?
Yeah, here in Egypt, yeah, for sure, we use the framework to assess what we're going on, and we will reach the full monitoring stage and maybe in 2 years. But we're now following the framework for assessing the performance of the park, and encouraging the tenants to follow as well the code of conduct and the regulations.
Yeah.
Maybe I can add here, because we started to work in Egypt, I think 4 years ago, and we started with that EIP assessments, and we were developing the roadmap, and then we were also starting to have exchange between the park management and the tenant companies. And then we were, as Mary already mentioned, we were developing the code of conduct of the park, and now we are, or the project was now ending and has now a second phase, and in the second phase we are now implementing. So now we are making the experience on how to implement the EIP framework, so how to address gas, which we identified in the EIP assessment. And so this is also a new experience for us now, and yeah, we're looking forward to continue to work on that.
Thank you so much, Marie.
Good. But there is, of course, I mean, this the brighter, more sustainable parts also, it will require some upfront financing, even if we do believe that it's a win-win situation, that the money will be coming back in the way of service fees, in way of attracting better companies. But how is this funding from beginning happening? Before I go to our multilateral partners, maybe we can also, Bernd, do you have financing schemes there at national level in South Africa, or perhaps you are knowledgeable about financing schemes for this type of activities in other countries, which the parks and the tenant companies can take a benefit from, and after that we can perhaps go into what is done then by the other organizations, starting perhaps with Dario, who has most deepest pockets, if I put it that way. Bernd,
okay, I'll be quick. We have a number of support mechanisms in the country. Firstly, the DTIC from time to time puts forward certain incentive schemes or mechanisms in support of industry specifically. Okay, so I need to say this very clearly. So typically up until now, our focus has always been on industry. That is starting to change. We have, and this is not in the DTIC, but in the Department of Science and Innovation, for example, there's a support mechanism where companies can access some support from DSI when they start looking at energy efficiency, for example. If I go back further on the National Cleaner Production Center that I mentioned earlier, it is funded in part by the DTIC, and part of that funding is allocated towards the energy efficiency program. So what companies can do, they can access the NCPC services for free. It doesn't cost them anything, but only for the assessments. Okay, so the NCPC is prepared, as long as, of course, you know, they can fit it into their business plan, the annual plan, because of course this can be a matter of resources. And they can put it into their plan. Then if a company requires assistance for those assessments for energy efficiency, for example, NCPC can go and do that. Okay. Obviously, this is quite an extensive amount of work, so it's not something that you just do in 1 or 2 weeks and it's done. All right. So that's in place. Then we have a number of the financing institutions in South Africa who actually support projects related to this, maybe not specifically around resource efficiency. Co-industrial, definitely around renewables. We have, for example, the Industrial Development Corporation, the IDC, that supports this through 1 or 2 of its programs. The DBSA supports municipalities. So there's a very strong municipal support mechanism in South Africa through the Development Bank of South Africa, the DBSA, and the city support program that sits in National Treasury, the Department of Finance. And through this mechanism, there are also opportunities to actually access that. And then lastly, we have a general infrastructure or critical infrastructure program in the DTIC that addresses certain components of this. For the industrial parks, this is typically the fund that we access. So yeah, from a funding perspective, there is some, but I mean, the need is massive. Okay, so yeah, that's me.
So how does then the development banks answer to this massive need? Dario?
So let's say that first of all, when we approach a country, as UNIDO and GIZ. So we support the government in terms of defining a program. And this means that then we assess some zones in order to understand, to pilot the program. And we understand which kind of enablers, also in terms of financing, are required. And in this context, after this kind of assessment, the bank can decide how to support the government. And there are 2 ways. The first one is a lending operation to the government to support private sector development. In this case, we are looking at incentives that are given to companies to implement, for example, some of the investment that have been identified during the piloting phase. Or there are specific programs that are associated to new certification that can be implemented at park level and so forth. So I think that there is a versatility in the way in which the banks support the implementation of the financing leg that we have identified as one of the core for the implementation of the industrial park framework, so eco-industrial park framework. So what we do is to assist governments that can require this intervention for the implementation of the strategy that we have outlined during in the practitioner handbook. So I make you an example of what we are doing in Turkey. We have identified, for example, $1 billion intervention to the 18 industrial parks that we have assisted in the piloting phase. And we have negotiated with the government to assist the implementation of the program at national level through 300 million out of this 1 billion of intervention that were more structured on supporting the parks and the companies to implement interventions for the increase of sustainability. That means industrial symbiosis from one side, to increase the renewables that they can exploit in the area, the reuse of water, wastewater in the industrial park, and so forth. This kind of intervention can be developed then in a PPP model. That means that another leg of the World Bank, that is called IFC, can really kneel down the specific intervention and support specific industries and private sector to implement their project based on the financing that they need, if the project is in the context of this framework. So I think that our way of supporting the program is in identifying those governments that require for the implementation an add-on, that if they can't do that based on their resources, we can help them to do this implementation, or at least to activate that. Good. I think that this is the way, but we have the same approach. I think that we have the same approach to the government, and then the government can decide if they need or not this kind of financing assistance. what we do is oriented to support the government to go in that direction, to use the financing to be sure that the implementation is done.
Great, thank you very much. Mareike, a couple of words on this financing part?
Not that much, Dario was mentioning, but maybe because I saw that there is also a participant from Mozambique today, and we are supporting in Mozambique an industrial park on those EIP assessments, roadmap developing, and so on, through a EU-financed facility, which is the Investment in Climate Reform Facility. And this is also an approach which we can do in other countries, African countries, Pacific countries. And that's not how we then also support or finance the implementation, right? It's just the assessments which we can support, and also the capacity building, but then it's also quite difficult for us to support that on the financing part. So back to you, Klaus, maybe you need to last.
We don't have our own funds, but what we do is that we do facilitate finding the right finance. We are having a set of eco-industrial park tools, and one of the new ones we are developing there is a sort of access to finance, trying to bring in both the needs and then the possibilities at park level in order to match make this financing. That's how we are dealing with that. Maybe some final questions here. I'm sort of just there was something that struck my eye here, which was something about how this EIP can promote business, promote innovation, promote you know, how can this be a vehicle for being dynamic? And perhaps also I would like to link that a little bit to the COVID situation that we are having. How can this innovation, how can the industrial parks be a sort of a vehicle for a safe opening of activities once that moment comes? Maybe on innovation and promotion, innovation and business promotion. Is there anything on Mary in Egypt at park level that you're doing from park management side that sort of tries to bring forward in innovation from companies?
For sure, we're trying to change the mindset into sustainability. So a kind of innovation to integrate, to use the other waste as a raw material for each factory to create the communication between them. That encourage another businesses also to enter into the park to save money, save transportation and everything. That kind, I think, definitely we have many issues regarding the financial issues due to the COVID-19 and so on, but that attract investors for sure, SMEs and startups to start with us, with our also financial facilities that we offer them consultancy services. We offer consultancy services here, so that encourage people to enter into manufacturing. Yeah.
Good, great. Any of the others? I'm including Bernd, you, even if I don't see you in the question. Yes, I think that what Mary was saying, that many park and park management they can provide training, they can provide innovation support. There is some parks which are very advanced in providing this type of services, business development, taking care of the permitting, this type of things in order to keep the innovations flowing.
Klaus, sorry. Yes. I think that for the question that you submit is quite interesting, especially for COVID. And the eco-industrial park doesn't propose a solution. It stimulates an answer. And specifically in case of COVID, what we see that is the disruption of global value chains. So there is a way to look into domestic markets. And so how we can recover resources at park level that can be used for this purpose to depend less on the imports to become more competitive. And I think that the concept that we have embedded in the EIP, that is to force the concept of circularity, helps in that direction. So to be more resilient in that circumstance. So what we do is to see that innovation can help to assess the way in which the industrial park can be more resilient in that sense. And this is one of the things that, so we don't have a specific answer, but we propose a way to reflect on that and to find solutions that can be adopted at park level for these needs. So I think that this is what the innovation that we have put in version 2.0 is significant compared to the previous one, that takes in consideration also this aspect.
And maybe another thing to add, we are also mentioning in the second version of the EIP framework, the topic on Industry 4.0, for example, so AI. And that's also what we were, as GIZ, we've been looking in what does Industry 4.0 play for a role in also industrial parks and also for the development of sustainable industrial areas or eco-industrial parks. And we did a study about that, and there are a lot of improvements in terms of environmental sustainability or also this whole topic of circularity. And I think that's also something we were mentioning, or we are mentioning under the park management aspects. That's something the park management has to be aware of, that there is something changing, even if it's not applied in all of the countries and also the infrastructure is not there. But those are kind of hot topics and global trends, and we have to be aware that's also part of our work and also of the work on the eco-industrial parks.
Yeah, so innovation and forward-lookingness is a part of it, and I think also that with industrial parks, when countries are looking into opening up their industries and their societies, if there's been restrictions, there is a great opportunity to do this through industrial parks. Also, it can be done in a systematic and in a contained manner, if you want. With that, we are coming very close to our time allocation. I would like to thank all the panel members for interesting discussion. Also for GGKP for organizing this seminar, and finally, of course, the audience, which have been hovering there between 150 and 200 throughout the session. I thank you all for attending, for all the good questions, and please do not hesitate to contact any of us if you want to have more information about EIPs and related sustainable industrial parks work. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.